And we good on room logistics?
Yes.
I just want to test and make sure you guys can hear me.
That's you.
You are coming in loud and clear.
Yes,
Loud
loud and clear.
Probably go a little louder. Hey, good afternoon, Archie.
Hello.
Don't know. I think the last. Oh. Is it back up? What's it down? Then you took it out.
For a while, yeah. No, actually, I'm moving. I have a medical.
I think you're familiar every once in a while. Yeah, I know.
I've still got a couple things. Well, there's always something. No, not as bad as you use Mercedes, but there's always something. I can fix. I've got a fuel tank that the sander is bad, so I got to get that done. I always check my fuel.
Yeah.
Always, you know. There's another inspection that may affect me. I've already got the holes cut in the bottom of the wing so they can inspect this, the wing bolts.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And
You access.
that's a usually thing we have to do. But you can get up in there. When I do my inspection, you know. Let's meet all the panels now and take everything.
Okay.
And also, I'm the one that ends up getting covered with grease.
I never deleted your account.
To make you more familiar. It honestly amazes me how many times I changed the lead by
$50,000 is one aviation unit.
I was in one here for about 4 years before I realized I was
I love
I mean, it's, my wife, she's like looking at my computer.
1967.
Good. We've got it.
Anyway, my son's working on it.
Oh, yeah.
He's got to get this for that's his next.
Yeah, it's just done. You got it around
Back a couple of
you speak here?
yeah.
Isn't it off you 7 or 8 years ago?
Because they're grown.
Anywhere you want. Where to go? The worst one I enjoy Andrews. I can't imagine a better these forks are solid, just sit out on the beach. Not for sport. I was talking to somebody he was down in Florida yesterday. He's from Marcel. He was in Florida working yesterday, and he was like,
Maybe it's just me.
what's the weather like over there? I was like, we were talking to 24 right now. He said it was 84 here yesterday. It's about 76 right now.
He's just out of the plane.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Airport.
I talked to my friend.
Vibration.
That's awesome.
I carry it like that. I don't have this.
Yeah. I landed at.
Beautiful in the summer.
Green.
To me, it's hard to know where the summer is, right? Really, well, when I'm here, but I always get down here though. They'll be like, when can you give our free? And they're really bug, and I'm like, what's that bug? Of course, the freeze doesn't really get rid of the oil.
I didn't know what was going on. I thought it was.
Many more mosquitoes and everything else up there than we did in the beach.
I was fine. Everything was good. So I started.
Yeah, I'm sorry, every student.
Yeah.
Hello. How many medium things? Yeah,
The distinction, yeah, the ledge.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have a quorum? Tristan?
We got ourselves a forum, so, we are at 1 o'clock. Ready to start us, whenever you're ready.
Okay, greetings everyone. I am Jennifer Hensley from the city of Hendersonville and am going to call the meeting to order. I think we need to first start off with a roll call.
Asheville Kimroni, here, present. Asheville Maggie Ullman,
Here, present.
Black Mountain Archie Pertiller,
Here, present.
BOT Division 14 Chuck McGrady. I'm trying to about him.
I believe he's on the road.
Okay. Buncombe County Amanda Edwards,
Present.
Fletcher Bob Daisy,
Here.
Kingwood County Kevin Hensley,
I'm here.
Henderson County Bill Lastly,
Right here.
Henderson County Rebecca McCall,
Here.
Hendersonville Jennifer Hensley,
Here.
Laurel Park George Banta,
Here.
Madison County Matt Wexel,
Live and in person.
Maggie Valley Mike Evelyn, here, just trying to come on in. And Weaverville Catherine Cordell. Here. Did I miss anyone?
Yes, this is Ann Coletta, Village of Flat Rock. I'm here.
Sorry, Ann. Anyone else? I think we're good to go.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the ethics statement. In accordance with the State Government's Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflict of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest with any respect to any matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in that public matter, or in that particular matter, excuse me. Anyone?
Think we're good?
Okay. Listen, I just will apologize now. I am on spring break with my kids and didn't anticipate having to lead the meeting. Anthony ended up going out of town last minute and has very unreliable, I guess more unreliable internet than I have. So please bear with me. This is my first time and I'm going to do the best that I can. So we have all received our updated packets. I think the last update was this morning. Does anyone have any changes or requests to change the agenda, or if not, then we could seek an approval for the agenda.
This is Kim Redding, so moved.
And can we get go ahead and we usually approve the agenda and the consent agenda simultaneously, if that's okay?
So moved.
Ann Coletta, second.
Asheville, Kim Rooney. Aye. Asheville, Maggie Ullman.
Aye.
Black Mountain, Archie Portillo. Buncombe County, Amanda Edwards.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Ann Coletta.
Aye.
Fletcher, Bob Davy.
Aye.
Gateway County, Kevin Inslee.
Aye.
Henderson County, Bill Lapsley.
Aye.
Henderson County, Rebecca McCall.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George Banta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Westall.
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Mike Evelyn.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
And Weaverville, Catherine Cordell. Aye. Yes, have it.
Okay, great. Moving on into public comment. Do we have any public comment today, either online or in person?
If there is anyone online hoping to make comments, please make a note in the chat, and we will unmute you for public comment. We are not seeing it again. I will note I got a lot of emails and calls saying there would be public comment, but big talk.
Okay. Barring nobody here to speak, we can move on into our first item of the agenda today, which is item A, which is the draft 2024-2023 tip with the Henderson County projects.
Okay, per usual, I have slides. So we decided to split up this item. It was previously kind of consolidated into one item, but to note, during the prioritization subcommittee meeting, we were going through the Henderson County swap as well as the Sweet Creek Road considerations. And after talking about Sweet Creek for quite a while, most people forgot about the Henderson County swap, so we thought it would be easier to split this item up. A lot of this is just, well, for this item, almost all of this was presented last month as informational. But as a reminder of what we're really discussing, we're talking about developing a system that's that is a funding document that's federally required that reflects planned investments in our region as well as across the state over the next 10 years. With a reminder, North Carolina's tip is 10 years. The federal requirement is only 5 years. Anyway, but the way that this document is typically split out is in the 3 different funding tiers. This is like overly simplified, but especially the improvement projects that we talk about a lot are split up into those 3 funding tiers that are from the STI or Strategic Transportation Investment Law. And the way that the funding in the that typically works is we see committed transportation projects taking up about 8 years with the funding in this document. Usually those last 2 years, and this is just rough estimating, those last 2 years are typically, they go to non-committed funding, i.e. projects that are being developed but aren't committed, they still have to be fully funded. However, over the last few years, what we've seen is cost increases kind of ate up those 2 years of non-committed funding, i.e. the committed projects, the cost was going up and up. In order to try to accommodate those costs, additional funding for additional years was taken. And cost increases kept coming in, and we saw more years of funding get used up. That is part of the reason why P 6.0, or the last iteration of prioritization, was essentially put on hold because the funding that was supposed to go to those projects or being considered was already going towards committed projects. Then MPO looked at all the costs for all the projects across the state, and we got to this beautiful chart that shows the funding situation. Just a quick interpretation in the statewide mobility funding tier, with all the committed projects, there would be no funding until 2041. Regional impacts push us towards 2053, and division needs 2041. Essentially, a decision was made by the Board of Transportation and the prioritization work group to right-size the tip and stick, or the tip and stick. And so a process was developed by the prioritization work group as well as the Board of Transportation on how that would be done. So as a reminder, the first step in this process was determining delivery versus to be reconsidered projects. Essentially trying to break out what are the projects that are so far along, the delivery projects, that removing them at this point could cause considerable issues. And the to be reconsidered projects, which were largely scheduled later on in the second step. The to be reconsidered projects were grants, and largely based on what round of prioritization they were funded in, as well as the score that they received in that round of prioritization. And following that, there's a flexibility option. That's provided to MPOs, RPOs, and NCDOT to determine potential project swaps. So if there's a project that was funded way back in P 3.0 that is no longer as big of a priority as something that was funded in P 5.0, the MPOs, RPOs, and DOT could recommend those swaps. Certain parameters are set for those swaps. Projects must be within 110% of the cost of the project being swapped out. MPOs and divisions must agree on all project swaps, serving as basically a check and balance. And projects must be swapped within their tier, or projects may cascade. This is the same rule as prioritization. So a statewide mobility project can be cascaded to regional or division. A regional project can be cascaded down to division, but projects can't go up. We can't take a division needs project and swap it for something statewide. And per the usual, my PowerPoint art, I'm going to open a gallery one of these days. So the way this works really is NCDOT started the 2024 through 2033 tip and stick basically from scratch. Then they added back in those delivery projects, and then they added back in the reconsidered projects until the budget is suspended. And basically steps 1 and 2. The following step is that swap of projects. So basically, bodies such as this one could swap out projects at their preference, so long as it's within those parameters. That is essentially where we are at today. The project swaps deadline is March 17th, tomorrow. And this has been something we have been working through for a long time. This is something we've been coordinating with the Henderson PAC in Henderson County, in Buncombe County and Hayward County. We've been coordinating with local government staff on recommendations. And we've been bringing that through our prioritization subcommittee as well as the PCC and the board initially for information last month. So the first item that we have for you all today is a swap that was requested by the Henderson PAC, the Transportation Advisory Committee. And that is to swap in the project I-4400BA, that is the interchange of US 64 and I-26, and to swap out R-5748. That is the Canoga Road modernization from Church Street down to Little River Road. And just to note, there were some discussions about U6124 and NC280, but it doesn't quite work within the parameters of swaps. Just a little bit of background on I-4400BA. That is a $29,500,000 project that was initially designed as part of the I-4400 I-26 widening, and correct me if I'm wrong, as part of that environmental document. The 2021 AGTs, the most recent information we have, the on-ramps have about 2,600 to 3,200 cars per day. We're anticipating that to increase. That should not be 2245, that should be 2045. We don't look that far out. We're anticipating a significant increase, 4,000 to 10,000 per day. The volumes on US 64 are already very high, more than 30,000. We're anticipating those increasing as well. We'll share some more information, but in a follow-up report, but US 64 and the congestion there is something we're going to want to talk about in the future. Also to note, bike lanes and sidewalks were requested to be included in the US 64 cross-section as part of this project. The project being swapped out, or proposed to be swapped out, R5748, that's Canoga Road. That is a $52,200,000 project that was funded at the division needs level. 2021 volume, a little under 5,000 to more than 11,000, especially as you get close to or into the city of Hendersonville. 2045, we're anticipating growth, but not enough to warrant anything more than some intersection improvement. But I think one of the key things for people who aren't familiar with this project is there has been some significant pushback, as shown in this no lightning Canoga picture. But there has been significant concern from some of the communities about the potential impact of the project to surrounding properties. DOT has done a lot of work to scale back the project, but at this point, based on the recommendation from the Henderson CAC, they would like to swap this project out in order to prioritize the interchange at US 64 and I-26. That is our first piece of business for today. We are looking for approval from this board. And again, once this board approves, we will be sending that to NCDOT and making sure that they are on board. Every indication I've gotten is that they are. Are there any questions or comments on this item?
Will it be canceled forever, or is just swapped out until it comes back around again and then gets reprioritized again?
That's a great question. My apologies for not explaining that. So the project's been swapped out. They would essentially be defunded in the TIF and STIF, meaning they would have to go back through the prioritization process to be funded.
And would still hit opposition, probably.
Potentially, but I do think with some of these projects, something to consider is re-looking at some of the design and seeing what might make more palatable projects in some ways, more effective projects. I think we do have some projects that maybe worth looking at again, and this might be one of them.
You need a motion. I'll make the motion to swap in the improvements to I-26 US 64 exchange, which has just been discussed, and swap out the modernization of Canoga Road from Church Street to Little River Road. And by the way, I'm here obviously, and my mute button wouldn't allow me to talk. It's real frustrating when it happens, but show me is here and having voted on the consent agenda, I guess. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Ann Coletta, Village of Flat Rock, I second.
Okay, let's call the vote.
Asheville, Kim Roney.
Aye.
Asheville, Maggie Ullman.
Aye.
Black Mountain, Archie Pertiller.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Amanda Edwards.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Ann Coletta.
Aye.
Fletcher, Bob Davy.
Aye.
Enid County, Kevin Inslee.
Aye.
Henderson County, Bill Lashley.
Aye.
Henderson County, Rebecca McCall.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George Banta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wexel. Maggie Valley, Mike Evelyn.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
And Weaverville, Catherine Cordell. The ayes have it.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's move on down to item B on the agenda, which is the 2024, I'll get this right, 2023 tip improvements in Buncombe County.
Okay, so again, this is relating to the same subject in terms of how we're developing our tip and tip. And this is one item that we brought up last month with somewhat incomplete information, largely revolving around Sweeten Creek Road. For those of you unaware, U2801A, Sweeten Creek Road widening, costs have increased yet again from $195 million to more than $250 million. We received word of this in December, right before the holidays. Not a great gift in CDOT. Essentially what we were told in December is that if costs are not sufficiently reduced, the project would be removed from the tip and tip again. For those of you who don't remember, last summer when the initial draft tip and tip was released, the Sweeten Creek Road project didn't make the cut. Additional funding was added thanks to the General Assembly, and Sweeten Creek Road got back on the tip and tip again. We held some meetings with the city, the county, and NCDOT about potentially looking at reducing the cross-section from a 4-lane divided of what's proposed and what's been presented to the public down to a 3-lane with the complete streets features still part of the project. Long story short, what we heard back from NCDOT was that reducing the cross-section helps to reduce the costs from a little under $255 million, but not enough. The reduction of about $35 million is not enough to keep this project on the tip and tip. We essentially provided the city and county staff as well as our prioritization subcommittee and the CCC with a number of options. The first option is to take no action. Essentially leave the project as it is. It's a 4-lane divided going from Rock Hill Road down to the intersection of Hendersonville Road and Airport Road. The result of taking no action would be that the project would be decommitted and would have to recompete in future rounds of prioritization. Option 2 would be to split the project at Mills Gap Road and prioritize the northern section. The northern section being from Mills Gap Road up to Rock Hill Road. The current volumes are 19,000 and a little bit above, and the projected growth on this corridor is 15 to 16,000 more vehicles by 2045. And also to note, the estimated cost is about $118 million. This is actually a slightly, I've been asked this a few times, this is actually a slightly shorter section than the southern section, just barely. but the cost is lower, as you'll see. So that was option 2, and that is what was recommended by the prioritization subcommittee as well as the PCC. Option number 3 would be segmenting it also at Mills Gap Road and prioritizing the southern section. That would be from the Hendersonville Road, Airport Road intersection up to Mills Gap Road. The volumes there are a little bit lower, 14,000 to 15,500. The projected ADC growth, volume growth, about 11 to 12,000 more vehicles per day by 2045. And again, that cost is higher, $136,500,000. In the discussions, one of the things that DOT noted is that a lot of the buildings along the southern section are closer. That's a big reason why that cost estimate is higher for the southern section. Since that time, an additional option was requested to be considered. That would be swapping out I-2513AC. That is the widening of I-240 and I-26 from 4 lanes to 6 lanes, along with interchange improvements. That's a project at more than $220 million. It is funded as a regional impact tier. It was cascaded to be funded in P5.0, and so relatively recently. The last round of prioritization with projects for programs. Construction is scheduled to begin in 2024, and right-of-way activities have begun for NCDOT, and stop me if I'm wrong, but no property acquisitions have occurred as of yet.
Correct. We got the NTD out for consultants to start the right-of-way work. We've also made first contact with some of the property owners and initiated the appraisals for them.
To note that there. Also, just to kind of put this in the broader context, there is a whole lot of projects going on along this corridor. If you haven't been on I-26 lately, there's the widening underway. That's part of the I-4700 project, as well as the I-4400 project going south of I-40. But over the coming years, parts of the connector are set to begin. So the AC section, that's the widening to West Asheville from I-40 to Haywood Road, that is currently considered committed. Section B of the connector, B is for bridge. That is the section going from Haywood Road up to Broadway. That is currently committed and is set for construction in 2024. Also getting looped in there is I-2513D. Don't forget about this one. The very, very little brother of the I-26 connector. That's the modernization of Riverside Drive. That is intended to be incorporated into this project. That goes from Hill Street up to Broadway. And if you're familiar with that corridor, it essentially hubs I-26. So incorporating it makes sense. One section that has been decommitted in this process, and is now the only interstate project that is set to be decommitted, is section C of the connector. That's the final improvements to the 240 interchange. But just to show there's a lot. Also, this doesn't show the future 26 widening that goes from Broadway north to Weaver Boulevard, which is not set to go by 2024, but is a currently committed project. Just to know, 26 has a whole lot going on and a whole lot more planned in the near future.
The bridge work there over Ridge Creek is part of the expansion, is it not?
My understanding is that it is not part of the expansion, but the bridges that are being replaced are being done so with the expansion in mind. So the bridges are being built with 6 or 8 lanes there. That's to be 8.
Yeah, the width there is can accommodate future wide construction.
There's a couple other things that's been in the news. City of Asheville recently approved a veterans package for multimodal and aesthetic improvements. to be included in the project. We got, or this board got a presentation from the project manager on that 6 months ago or so. And also, what we've heard from the division is that removing Section 8C from the different STIP would likely cause additional design work to be needed because the Section B that's moving forward is currently designed to do so with Section 8C widening, assumed to be going on simultaneously. So, vision folks again, a tapering of some sort would need to be designed if this were to happen. Also, something we talked about recently with this project is having sections B, A, and C weren't enough. So something we talked about a few months ago is that sections A and C were reconfigured, I think within the last year, to now include I-2513AA. That's some of the improvements to I-40 that are planned as part of this project. Section 8B, which is some of the interchange improvements at both 2640, 240, as well as at Avenue. 8C, that's the widening through West Asheville from I-40 to Haywood Road. And Section C, which has kind of been trimmed down, but is the final interchange improvements at 26, 240, and 40. A little bit of context in terms of the one of the projects to be considered for swapping in for the Section 8C of the 25th connector, U5972, New Leicester Highway, so right outside these offices. That's an access management project from Hatton Avenue to Newfound Road. That has been funded since P 5.0. Side paths, sidewalks, and bus shelters were included in the initial design, but to note it is not currently scheduled for construction with the revised timelines of the TIP and STIP. But to note, we don't have a ton of access management projects on the books. So regardless of what happens, I do want to point out access management. We talked a lot about safety at HWA. With improving safety countermeasures and found those types of projects help reduce serious and fatal crashes 25 to 31%. But all in all, the swaps that would be proposed as part of option 4 would be swapping out of I-2513AC, so $220 million, $820,000 in regional impact funds, and you would swap in the southern section of Sweet Creek Road that would make Sweet Creek fully funded, as well as the New Leicester Highway Access Management Project. So within the parameters of the swaps, those two projects could be swapped in for the I-26 connector. But to go back, the TCC and prioritization subcommittee both recommended option number 2. However, option number 4 was not on the table at that point in time. So we are looking for a recommendation on what to do with Sweet Creek Road. Either segment it to try to save it, or save a portion of it, swap it out for the section of the I-26 connector, or do nothing, and you'd have to get all of Sweet Creek funded again at some point in the future. Are there any questions or comments about what's needed today?
I can make a comment. I drove Sweet Creek Road on the way home every day for 10 years. I drove to the airport on I-26, but I never wanted to come home on I-26. So I came home on Sweet Creek Road. And I would usually not have a problem with that southern end. So if I were going to recommend something, I would say segmenting it would probably work for the average traveler. I would try to leave work somewhere between 4 and 5:30. And that was just me. my opinion.
So I remember good.
But I'm not making a motion, I'm giving a comment.
This is Tim from Asheville. I wrote down some thoughts today. We're presented with a choice as we're considering major 30-year project funding delays due to rising construction costs and lack of additional funding options. I just want to speak like the way I'm looking at it. For my vote, the choice is between improving accessibility and safety on our interior corridors that we desperately need for development of affordable housing and economic development and job opportunities. Or expanding Section A of the 26 project that I feel we could leverage for different state and federal funding. I wish the interior corridors had a chance of funding leverage, but my experience informs my position that the I-26 connector stands a better chance. As an educator, my students will ask and continue to ask today about decisions like the one before us today, and I feel I have a moral and fiscal responsibility, especially around our safety metrics. I mean, you look at those once a year and we keep ending up at the same place. For not just safety, but for our interior infrastructure, for ours and for future generations, I plead for consideration to swap Sweeten Creek and New Lester Highway projects for the A section of I-26, pursuing other federal and state funding for the remainder of the interstate projects. Like we saw happen recently with the $30 million that came for the other I-26 project. Thank you for your consideration.
I guess I'd like to make a comment too at this point, Tristan. Hopefully end it with a motion. As we all know, over a year ago, this project, Sweeten Creek Road, was downsized from, I believe, 5 lanes to a smaller project. And we've all learned recently that, as it was just described, the southern half of it, south of Mills Gap Road, is being proposed for elimination because of the budget. And there's a lot of roads like this, like Sand Hill and Sardis and Swananoa River Road, New Lester Highway, Sweeten Creek in its entirety that are congested today, that have problems today, that are congested many times a week today. And then it just, in South Buncombe and Arden is a mess. Right now, it's a thoroughfare that connects half of Buncombe County, but it also connects, Hoopers Creek and Fletcher and Henderson County to the north as well. So it's a really important route. So that led me to think about, okay, what else is in here that we can cut back and consider moving funds from, which brings me to my point, which would be to look at what I consider the residential section of I-240/I-26 in West Asheville, currently slated for 6 lanes. It's a segment of highway that isn't really congested today. And at the times that it is, it's due to the interchange at I-40 and I-26, or the interchange where the existing bridge is. It's due to the bridge. It's due to there being one bridge there. So my suggestion and hope would be for us to look at not widening that portion of I-240 and displacing people from their homes and creating a wider corridor that people will be interested in living near, and using that savings to make sure we get Sweeten Creek done, and the other projects we have in Buncombe County. So yeah, that would be that's involving, I believe, because section A and B are at Haywood Road, so that would be involving, not widening the lanes north of I-40 and south of wherever the new bridge diversion would occur, north of Haywood Road. So I think that involves both sections A and B. But that's my request for consideration, and put that proposed swap in the form of a motion.
Here's your motion to adopt option 4, swapping I-26A section for New Lester Highway and Sweeten Creek and its completion. I second your motion.
Okay, do we have any discussion before we call for this vote?
Can you could the motion be clarified, please?
So I believe that the motion that's on the table is option 4 in your packet, and it is the swapping out I-251-13 AC to fund all of U-2801A and U-5972, which is the newly sister connector or improvement plan.
Thank you.
Jennifer, can I ask to clarify that further for myself?
Sure.
In this swap, in this hypothetical, we would still be improving the interchanges of I-240 and the on-ramps and exit ramps in that section. It would just be reducing the lanes. And that's my hope to put on the table.
Madam Chair, where's the plan for that? I don't see that anywhere.
I actually did not hear your question.
Yes. They were asking where is the plan for including the interchanges but not the widening? I would just say that at this point, we do not have cost estimates for just doing interchanges along the I-26 connector project. That's something that would likely take several months to produce. And so at this point, I don't believe that is a feasible thing to be considered at this juncture. Our deadline for swaps and modifications is 1 day, so for at least for today's business. We have the projects and the information associated with them as they are currently designed, but we do not have the information for additional modifications to the project.
Thank you. Okay, any more discussion on?
If I can speak to the motion, I generally like to defer to the local officials in things that are in their districts and near their districts, but this change, in my opinion, is just a mistake. We do need to address Sweeten Creek. There's no doubt about that. Everybody recognizes that. But the project being swapped out here has 4 or 5 other projects all connected to it. And you've got 6 lanes going to be going into 4 lanes, and what's going to happen in the northern end and how quickly that will happen. I just think you're making a mistake. I wish I agree with Councilwoman Roney about the opportunities for federal and state funding, additional federal and state funding, but I don't see that. I mean, we've been lucky to get the funding, additional funding that we've gotten, but I don't, there are whole bunches of other projects, and maybe I-26, this 240 section of it would rate higher than Sweeten Creek if looked at on a statewide basis, but I don't see where those funding is. So recognizing 240 and that project and its effect upon neighboring areas, including my former district, I'm going to oppose the motion, and if the motion fails, my motion will be to accept the second alternative here. And I would add one other thing. I mean, the process we've got to figure this out as between DOT and MPO. We can't not be on the same page. And I know I'm on the DOT board, but I'm not representing the DOT here. I know the DOT does not want this proposal to go forward, and it would not be acceptable, having talked to both of the division engineers, to make this change in the planning document.
Right.
I'd love to jump in if I can.
Please jump in.
Hey y'all, this is Maggie Ullman from City of Asheville. This is my second call with y'all, just having gotten elected this past fall. So thanks for having me. And I just wanted to weigh in on this particular conversation, having had the chance to speak with my colleagues at the city and county, as well as speaking with city staff earlier. I end up being in favor of option 2 as well. I think that there's spirit and sentiment in the vision of really doubling down on Sweeten Creek. Commissioner Sloan, I really share the same concern. I have talked to so many folks in South Asheville who are really concerned. And so I really would love to see that full section funded. However, to pull back on one of the pieces of this 26 spine, I have a lot of concerns about what changes that'll create to other things along 26. I think 26 isn't just about Asheville. I think it goes through our neighborhoods, and we have a duty to represent the neighbors near it. And we have a duty to support our neighbors in Haywood County and everywhere else. I also feel pretty concerned, although I know I'm new to the conversation, just a couple months, but this scale of a change of direction, I think, came about on Monday, and to vote on it on Thursday, I feel real concerned about that for transparency with the community and all of the people who were part of and leading up to the discussion to get what's in the queue now. I think it's a big conversation, and I understand that we didn't get the Sweeten Creek data until a couple weeks ago. Which is instigating the need to be creative, because we're disappointed that the Sweeten Creek project in its entirety can't get funded. And I think that such a major shift to a regional priority in such a short notice just makes me feel uncomfortable, and it makes me feel like I would need a lot more time to be comfortable with option 4, and I don't think we have that time. So I just wanted to share some of my thoughts. I appreciate the counter motion towards option 2. I'll be leaning towards option 2 myself. Thank you.
I would also like to have a moment to speak. This is Amanda Edwards, Buncombe County Commissioner. Very well stated, Councilwoman Ullman, and to Councilwoman Roney and my colleague Commissioner Sloan. I think there are way more projects that need funded than there's ever going to be funding available for. And the Patton Avenue to Newfound Road project is certainly within my newly drawn district. And yet I haven't heard from many constituents, actually no constituents, that this is something that is a priority to them. What I have continued to hear is how important the entirety of completing the I-26 project is, particularly to those of us who live not within the city, but utilize I-26 on a daily basis to get into the city, to get into other parts of our region for work, for economic development opportunities. I first came to this county in 1994, and I was told within the next 5 years there was going to be this great interstate completed, and it was going to open up all these amazing opportunities to not only Buncombe County, but to Henderson, Madison, as well as Haywood County. And here it is many years later. We know this project started in 1989. We're moving in closely on 40 years of a discussion. And I am certainly not comfortable derailing a project that has finally gotten to this point where we're ready to support it, where it's so close to beginning this next phase of construction. I've followed this for a number of years, long before I was ever an elected leader in Buncombe County. And it has taken, as we all know, a lot of effort and a lot of heavy lifting on a lot of folks to get us here. And to speak as well, I think the short time frame in which this has been approached is not something that I'm particularly comfortable with moving forward in just a 4-day time span. I've talked to a lot of folks across the area over the past 4 days, and what I have consistently heard is please support option 2. Let's move forward on this to get to some final completion. So I will also be supporting option 2 as well.
Is there any more discussion? So I guess we need to call for a vote for the first motion that was made and seconded, and that was for option 4. And we can go ahead and proceed with that vote.
Can I ask a question? Is it really a motion when the person who made the motion came back and tried to clarify that wasn't, that he wanted to keep out the interchanges? Because we don't have option 5 to keep in the interchanges.
His motion isn't actually an option that's on the table. I'm no expert in Robert's rules, but I would say that there is, we don't have to stay within the 4 options necessarily. I think there's logistical concerns that have been stated, but it sounds like a modification from option 4 was the motion, and the second would be my understanding. So option 4, however, not removing all of I-2513AC, but to try to maintain the interchanges without the widening.
Okay, can we go ahead and call that vote?
Asheville Cameroni. Aye. Asheville Maggie Ullman.
No.
Black Mountain Archie Portiller.
No.
DOT Division 14 Chuck McGrady.
No.
Buncombe County Parker Sloan.
Aye.
Buncombe County Amanda Edwards.
No.
Flat Rock Ann Coletta.
No.
Fletcher Bob Davies.
No.
Haywood County Kevin Inslee.
No.
Henderson County Bill Lastly.
No.
Henderson County Rebecca McCall.
No.
Hendersonville Jennifer Hensley.
No.
Laurel Park George Banta.
No.
Madison County Mount Wexel.
Hell no.
Maggie Valley Mike Evelyn.
No.
Okay, the
Urban Transit Brandon Rogers.
No.
And Weaverville Catherine Cordell. No. The motion does not pass.
okay, and we actually did have another motion on the table for option 2. Is there?
You put number 2 up.
Yeah, that option 2 is up.
Okay. I move the adoption of so-called option 2, segment the project to Mills Gap and prioritize the northern section.
Amanda Edwards, second.
Okay, is there any discussion before we call this vote?
Yeah, this is Bob Davy. I've got one quick question. In this option 2, would that include some widening south of Mills Gap Road to give vehicles room to merge in?
So I believe
That's a wonderful question, Bob. Go ahead, Jen.
I thought there was an actual intersection improvement there that was included as part of that.
Correct. So a little bit more information. The northern section would include the intersection improvements at Mills Gap and Sweeten Creek. And also just to note, there is another CIP project moving forward with the modernization of Mills Gap Road, which would essentially cut through this project.
Did that answer
So
your
does that
question?
answer, Bob? It would include the intersection and go a little bit south.
So I think the answer that I heard was yes, there will be some room afterwards to merge in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, can we call the roll?
Before we do that, I know that for the next however long until we get the rest of the funding for this, I'll be asked to support housing development and economic development on this corridor. and the number one concern is going to be traffic and safety. So unfortunately, I have to say no to the whole plan just because of my deep concern for not finding funding. But I look forward to saying yes to future safety infrastructure for this corridor.
Thank you for your comment.
Asheville, Kimroni? No. Asheville, Maggie Ullman?
Yes.
Black Mountain, Archie Portiller?
Yes.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady?
Yes.
Buncombe County, Parker Sloan?
Yes.
Buncombe County, Amanda Edwards?
Yes.
Flat Rock, Ann Coletta?
Yes.
Fletcher, Bob Davies?
Yes.
Haywood County, Kevin Inslee?
Yes.
Henderson County, Bill Lapsley?
Yes.
Henderson County, Rebecca McCall?
Yes.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley?
Yes.
Laurel Park, George Banta?
Yes.
Madison County, Matt Wetzel?
Yes.
Maggie Valley, Mike Evelyn?
Yes.
Urban Transit, Brandon Rogers?
Yes.
And Weaverville, Catherine Cordell? Yes. The ayes have it, the motion passes.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thanks for the good discussion. I think we all have concerns about DOT projects, and thank you for everybody's input. The next item is C, which is the fiscal year 2024 Unified Planning Work Program, and we have an update from staff for that.
Yes, so this is the final, although we can amend it throughout FY24, but we have the draft Unified Planning Works Program, UPWP, or as Chairman Sutton calls it, the UPWIP. The draft was approved by this board last month. The final is before you today. So with the UPWP, just a little bit of background, that is essentially the MPO's budget. It is a budget that reflects the planned tasks for MPO staff. It is also the budget for special studies funded through the MPO, either managed by MPO staff or by local government staff. But it also includes Section 5303 funding that goes to the city of Asheville. Also, by passing this document, it re-designates the city of Asheville as the Region 5303 direct recipient. And it also includes some funding for 5307 planning support. A few of the major changes that we went over last month. There's less emphasis being put on data modeling and traveler behavior to reflect the work completed in FY22 and 23. We have prepared you all a presentation on the updates to development shape files that we're required to do. You should thank me. But it's a lot of work that our staff has been working on, and it's something that's important to the region's travel demand model. We added work for P7.0, the next round of prioritization. As we've talked about in the past, that's getting ready to gear up in the next few months. Also developing a local input point methodology and starting to look at regional impact points. We're putting more funding towards special study administration. We're seeing a number of carryover studies. Those are studies that were started in previous fiscal years, and the work is continuing. I'll just say, I know this isn't everyone's favorite acronym, but I do want to say that the work that's required of MPO staff for these special studies is not a ton, but it's considerable. And essentially, if MPO funds are being utilized for studies, those are federal funds. They come with federal requirements. And the amount of work that we've had to do to make sure that those federal requirements are being followed has been considerable, especially in the past year. And so we are increasing our funding to make sure we're accounting for that work. Also, with the award of the Regional Safe Streets for All Action Plan, MPO staff will be overseeing that project. Also, local staff will, Daniel, if you want any more work, you let us know. And also, one of the paved trail feasibility studies that was funded through NCDOT, that's the section in Asheville that would help look at links for the Wilma-Dyson Greenway, and MPO staff will be managing that study. More emphasis is being put on regional planning for the MCP development and 5307 sub-allocation formula updates. Long story short, we've now got to work on our 25-year plan, and we have to look at how regional transit funds are distributed to the various transit agencies in the region. We've also added a staffing and compensation study. DOT, in your email this morning, DOT requested we split that out as its own line item, so the updated packet reflects that. Basically making sure that the staffing levels and compensation levels at the MPO are comparable to some of our peers, to make sure that as we go out and hire, we are putting out the compensation that would attract the planners that we need. And finally, and maybe of most interest, the percentage of local dues has been recalculated using the 2020 decennial census figures. So every 10 years we do this. We update the percentage of population within our dues-paying members. We pulled in the 2020 census data. The city of Asheville, Buncombe County, and the city of Hendersonville saw a slight increase in the percentage of dues to the MPO as part of this. Henderson County, Haywood County, the town of Waynesville, and Madison County saw a slight decrease in their percentage of dues based on this calculation. As a reminder, we still have discussions ongoing with Haywood as well as Madison about what we want to do with the MPO's planning boundaries. So we're hoping to resolve that by the next time we do this, which will likely result in a recalculation one way or the other, but just a reminder there. But in the document presented, I tried making it as beautiful as I could, folks. We have the narrative of the planning tasks that are anticipated to be done by the MPO staff. Again, this is something that we update throughout the fiscal year. Your consent agenda included is a couple of changes to the FY23 work program. It also includes a narrative from the city of Asheville regarding the 5303 work tasks that are planned to be performed as part of that regional planning funding that comes through FDA and goes to the city. I will not read through that word for word. Special studies are summarized in here. Just two notes, if you have a special study, this is important. We have this pop up a lot where the scope of a special study funded by us has to be reflected here. It doesn't have to be every little thing that's going to be looked at, but it roughly has to be the scope and where the limits are. If what you're planning with your study doesn't line up with what's in here, we have an issue and we need to resolve that before funds are spent. So that is something to look at if you are a entity with those funds. And then finally, all the funding and whatnot is summed up in this short spreadsheet that reflects all of the work tasks that are prescribed by FHWA and FDA for MPO staff, with 5303 for city staff, and the
funding going towards special studies. We also have these carryover studies that are at the bottom reflected as well. We also have local match. I reflected the change in local dues percentages, and just to note that we do have, we are utilizing some carryover funds. So even though we've got an increase in federal funds, the total amount of local dues is the exact same as last year. But as part of this, so again, we're looking for approval of the planning work program today. As part of this is also the MPO self-certification, basically saying that the MPO is following the federal planning guidelines for regional transportation planning. Essentially, we have a board. Our board reflects the planning boundaries that are required of the MPO, and we have a 25-year transportation plan, as well as all the things that go with that. Essentially saying we are doing our job to the best of our ability. But that is something we are looking for approval today. All the time. Any questions or comments?
Okay, do we have a motion?
This is Kimberly, City of Asheville, move to approve.
Second.
Asheville, Kim Rooney.
Aye.
Asheville, Maggie Omen.
Aye.
Black Mountain, Archie Portiller. DMV Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Parker Sloan.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Amanda Edwards.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Ann Coletta.
Aye.
Fletcher, Bob Davy.
Aye.
Taylor County, Kevin Ensley.
Aye.
Henderson County, Rebecca Bill Lapsley.
Aye.
Henderson County, Rebecca McCall.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George Banta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wexel.
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Mike Evelyn.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
And Weaverville, Catherine Cordell. Aye. The ayes have it.
Okay, wonderful. Moving along to the amendments to the 2020 to 2029 Transportation Improvement Program.
Okay, hey everyone. My name is Logan DiGiacomo. I'm a transportation planner with the MPO. I apologize for not being in person today. I'm not feeling great. So the amendments for the TIP this month are all modifying existing projects. So there's no projects being added or removed to the TIP this month. The modifications largely include segmenting HS 2014, which is a highway safety project. And that's into several project breaks to improve safety on various roads, including Asheville Highway, US 19, US 64, among a few others. And that is just going to be stuff like guardrails, rumble strips, etc. The Blue Ridge Parkway, US 23, US 74 interchange project is also being segmented at the request of the division and the MPO. So that would be segmented into U6172A and 6172B. 6172A would be focusing on the interchange itself. 6172B would be improvements on US 23 and US 74. To reflect the latest delivery schedule, both segments of the Black Mountain Riverwalk Greenway project, which is EB 5547A and 5547B, will be delayed one fiscal year to allow additional time for preliminary engineering and right-of-way respectively. Also to allow additional time for right-of-way, the replacement of the I-40 bridge going over Beaver Dam Road will delay its construction from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 24. And finally, R2588B, which is a widening project for NC 191. will no longer utilize build NC bonds, but will instead use federal funding. So we are looking for the board to approve these amendments to the TIP.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve. Matt Weichel.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Amanda Edwards, second.
I have a question. These don't include the amendments we made today, correct?
Correct. This is to the existing TIP and STIP, the 2020 through 2029. The first two items would go into the future TIP and STIP, the 2024 through 2033, which will be considered for adoption in August.
Asheville, Kim Roney.
Aye.
Asheville, Maggie Ullman. Black Mountain, Archie Pertiller.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Parker Sloan.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Amanda Edwards.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Ann Coletta.
Aye.
Fletcher, Bob Davie.
Aye.
David County, Kevin Ensley.
Aye.
Henderson County, Bill Lapsley.
Aye.
Henderson County, Rebecca McCall.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George Banta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wexel.
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Mike Evelyn.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
And Weaverville, Catherine Cordell. Aye. The ayes have it.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We have an informational update from NCDOT staff today on the passenger rail.
Good afternoon.
Yes, and thank you, Ron. Just a quick intro. Ron Lucas is joining us from the NC Rail Division. This is something that we got a general update from the Rail Division a few months ago. At a recent meeting with Chairman Sutton and I, down in Raleigh, the Rail Division folks let us know that they're wrapping up the study from Salisbury to Asheville, and we asked them if they could join us for a presentation. So, Ron, thank you for you and your team putting this together on relatively short notice. Take it away.
All right. Well, thank you. I will let everybody know this is my first time making this presentation. Usually it's others, but due to multiple scheduling conflicts, you have me for the day. I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen to show the presentation. I think I have it right here. Let's see. Okay. Let me try. All right, let me try this again. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're good to go. Okay, this is of course, this is the Western North Carolina Passenger Rail Study Update. As everybody knows, when we talk about Western North Carolina passenger rail service, we're talking about basically Salisbury to Asheville along the Norfolk Southern line. This map here basically shows the network in Western North Carolina. The Norfolk Southern lines in green. The CSX lines are in, I guess you could say, purple. And then you have the NCRR line that's running through the Charlotte to Salisbury to Greensboro and points east. Okay, service concept characteristics. The corridor is 139 miles between Asheville and Salisbury, and it connects the Western North Carolina communities with the Piedmont and Carolinian rail service in Salisbury. This study, it does assume 3 base round trips a day. Basically, the travel ranges are from 3 hours and 25 minutes to 3 hours and 48 minutes. And of course, we decided to break out the 2 segments from Salisbury to Marion and then Marion to Asheville, specifically Marion to Asheville to show the amount of time taken to travel from Marion over Old Fort Mountain to Asheville. So we have a range of 3 hours and 25 minutes to 3 hours and 48 minutes. And those travel times are based on train performance analysis done. There's a software called Rail Traffic Controller software. So that was done last month to come up with those travel times. And I guess with the range of travel times, it assumes a range of intermediate station stops. We're talking about 4 to 6 stations. The ridership is also based off of a statewide rail ridership model, and with adjustments for, I guess you can have cross-platform transfers, and the range gives some uncertainty into the use of the cross-platform transfers for, say, the Piedmont riders. Those are going down the 85 corridor to transfer over to the Western North Carolina train. Okay, we did work up some conceptual capital cost, basically totaling $665 million. That includes track infrastructure, rail signals, and PTC, which is positive train control. We assumed modeled 3 train sets for equipment. Those train sets are based off of the Aero trains that actually Amtrak is actually working to procure Aero trains to be manufactured by Siemens to replace their fleet. Basically, those Aero trains consist of 1 locomotive, 1 cafe car, 1 business class coach, 3 additional coaches, and 1 cab coach. I also include that the PCC cost, positive train control, is based off of a per mile cost basis. It's approximately 263,000 miles dollars per mile. Those are 2023 dollars. And station costs are based off of they were done internally by rail division employees. One other capital cost that we decided to capture is, say, extending to the River Arts District as opposed to the Biltmore Village Station, which resulted in an additional corridor cost of $5 million. And also, it does add 8 to 9 minutes of travel time. Okay, the operation and maintenance O&M costs, operation and maintenance costs are based off of the experience and analysis of the current Piedmont and Carolinian services, which are operated by Amtrak. I'll share that the net operating costs are based off of average costs per train mile of the Piedmont service, and they apply that to the Western North Carolina corridor, less of course, the estimated ridership revenue. So we see that in 2023 dollars, we see track and signal maintenance operating costs or annual cost of $2.3 million, net operating cost of a range of $5 million to $8.6 million, which results in total annual costs ranging from $7.3 million to $10.9 million. All right, important considerations for Western North Carolina service. The actual train service schedules will be coordinated with the future Carolinian and Piedmont schedules, which of course provides connections to stations between Charlotte and Raleigh. I think a lot of people know about the current S-Line project on the Southeast Corridor. That project will better connect Western North Carolina with the stations north of Raleigh at a higher frequency, and provide greater ridership opportunities to passengers in Western North Carolina. One thing that we are definitely aware of is the coordination with Norfolk Southern. I think that's going to be critical to develop the further develop the project and identifying the project needs. Jumping back to the River Arts District Station concept, as I mentioned before, it's additional $5 million more than if the station was at Biltmore Village. It does assume a 20-mile-per-hour speed through the yards approaching the River Arts District, and I think I mentioned before that that does add up to 8 to 9 minutes of travel time. All right, next steps. The draft report, the draft Western North Carolina passenger rail study, that is anticipated to be completed sometime in early April. I believe that this draft report will be available for stakeholders to review and comment. I guess one of the next steps is MPO, RPO consideration for the project or projects to be submitted into STI. And currently, we NCDOT is preparing an application for Western North Carolina passenger rail for the FRA, Federal Rail Administration's Corridor Identification and Development Program. This application is due, it says late March, it's actually March 27th. We plan to have that application submitted in the next few days, early next week, actually, I think is our goal. But we did hold a meeting on the Corridor Identification Program back in February, the 21st. And for those who can see the screen, that there is some information from FRA on the Corridor Identification Program at the website. I can provide that website outside of this presentation if need be. Hopefully, FRA is expected to act quickly and announce the corridors accepted into the program in the spring of this year. So it's a pretty quick turnaround between the submittal deadline date and the announcement. And this CID program is not a one-off program. It will be opened annually for corridor submittals to be evaluated for acceptance into the FRA project pipeline. So it's not if you miss it this year or you miss it, you don't have another opportunity. Okay, if FRA, let's be optimistic, say if FRA accepts the project into the program, the Corridor Identification Program, what it provides is up to $500,000 to scope the service development plan. Federal funds, the cost share, it's a 90-10, 90% federal and 10% non-federal. Non-federal ratio is to develop a detailed service development plan, including that critical engagement with Norfolk Southern. The federal funds that are at 80-20, that's the 90-10 pot is for those purposes that I just listed, but the federal funds that are funded at an 80-20 share is to prepare environmental documentation in accordance with NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act. This program will hopefully include the WNC, Western North Carolina Corridor, in the pipeline of projects for future consideration of FRA grants. So the federal funds may be available for initial operating and maintenance costs for up to the first 6 years. And there is definitely an opportunity for local support for station area development planning and federal grant pursuit. So that's the big talk in the rail division right now. We're trying to finish up that application. And let's see, this map, I can explain it. We're talking about 12 corridors in the state of North Carolina. Of course, you see the corridor between Salisbury and Asheville. We have some new corridors that are under this application: Raleigh to Greenville, Goldsboro to Wilmington, Goldsboro to New Bern, Morehead City, and some others. And we're in part of the corridor identification program. It is not only for new service, but increasing existing service. So we see the existing service under the program hopefully to be increased between I guess Raleigh and Charlotte, and then between Raleigh and Hamlet going down the the line that runs down to Florida, the Silver Star line, I believe, and then over to Selma. So if you have any questions, we do have our rail director as a contact person, but I guess I'll put in the chat that Eddie McFalls from an embedding consultant with us, and myself, I think that will be a better direct contact if you're looking for a quick answer. So I will provide that in the chat, and I am open to any questions. I'll try my best to answer. If I don't, I will make sure that I capture all questions asked and submit it to Eddie for us to get a quick response. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today, Mr. Lucas. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I know that
Wexler.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. All right, well, I guess I'll go now. So who is the target market to be a rider on this? And how much is it going to cost a rider to go from Asheville to Salisbury and then per se from Asheville to Raleigh?
It's good. I think that's a pretty good question. I guess right offhand, I would not know as far as that cost. I know that a lot of assumptions were made off of the Piedmont and Carolinian service. I definitely can try to hunt that down, but I think it's truly tied into what we're seeing now on those two routes.
Okay, well, even I looked it up after the last meeting, the TCC meeting. I think it was $22 or $24 to get from Asheville to Salisbury, and then another $22 or $24 to get from Salisbury to Raleigh because you're going to have the transfer station.
So roughly $50
Yep.
to get from Asheville to Raleigh. But that would take, just by estimation, I mean, and I'm just trying to figure out who the target market would be because, like, for example, I can drive to Salisbury in a little over 2 hours. If I go by train, it's going to take me about 3.5, right?
Correct.
So I assume it'd be about 3.5 to Raleigh.
From Salisbury to Raleigh.
I'm just trying to figure out who would be taking advantage of this.
Well, I guess it does provide another option, another mode of transportation. And we're talking about creating as many options as we can. Yeah, I mean that's one of the I guess comparative items as far as service. You're talking about a longer service. You're talking about service that may not. I mentioned that there was we modeled 4 to 6 stations between Salisbury and Asheville. There is the thought that we did model that we're not going to stop at every station along the route. We're going to do skip stops. Some routes will include some stations and some won't. So that's something else to consider as well.
No, I'm not. I was just curious. I'm not trying to say it's not a worthy cause. I was just kind of curious as to. That's a lot of money to spend, and I was just wondering who we're targeting with that money. So that's all. I'll stop. Thank you.
No, that's a good question. Just so folks are aware, Chairman Sutton did provide a letter of support that was requested. I believe the initial due date was like March 3rd. So Chairman Sutton did send a letter of support on behalf of the MPO. That didn't go through the board because I believe the window was 6 days to get a letter. So we did put together one. A couple of the things that we noted is that the Asheville Airport number of flights has been increasing dramatically. I believe it hit 1 million passengers, I think 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It's now at 1.8 million. And some of the data provided by the Chamber of Commerce is that the majority of tourists visiting Asheville and Buncombe, at least, are coming from somewhere around 100 to 250 miles. So basically, a fairly long distance, maybe not long enough for flight. But that's something that we noted, and it's also something that we see on volume increases on I-40 and I-26. So just wanted to note that so people are aware. Any other questions or comments for Ron?
Well, first, thank you for the letter, and that was a tight turnaround. I appreciate you being on top of that. I got to talk about my great Aunt Faye. When she rode the rail here, it was a very long time ago. She lived to be 102. She also used to go to the firefighter dance parties at the Grove Arcade, so it's been all about that. Very interesting. But I got to talk to some freight rail workers recently, and they shared the same curiosity that I did, so I thought I would confirm. The reason that we're not going to a closer location is because of the saluted grade. Is that correct?
The saluted grade is the route, the northern southern route that connects Asheville to Spartanburg.
Right.
That portion of rail line, but basically between Tuxedo East, Flat Rock, and Landrum, South Carolina, is currently inactive.
It's currently being studied to be converted into a rail trail.
And it's more than being studied. They announced yesterday or this morning that there has been an agreement between the land trust to acquire that whole. There's an agreement to acquire the whole saluted grade all the way into South Carolina. Land trust on both sides of the border. The grade itself is highly. I mean, it's got bridges to nowhere. It's been so long since it's been used, so it's not in any way active.
Once again, shared their curiosity because connecting Buncombe to Henderson with another mode of transportation would be so amazing. Maybe one day we'll have light rail between the locations. Opportunity for economic development on that corridor. But thank you for adding that in.
To note, I believe the rail between Asheville or Buncombe and Henderson is still active.
That's still active in this.
It's a Blue Ridge Southern, the short line freight operator.
It just stops on the south end of Hendersonville.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. We're going to move on into our DOT updates. Do we have any updates from District 13 today?
Yeah, hi, this is Brendan from Division 13. Can you hear me?
You can.
Excellent. I have a few quick updates. We on the pre-construction side, we talked about I-2513 earlier. Kristen had a map up there. The sections AA, AB, and AC are the portions from exit 44 on I-40 up through West Asheville to Haywood Road interchange on I-240, 20, and 26. The right-of-way process, if you will, is in place and has begun. Those projects will let, the AA and AB section will let in November, and the AC section, which we were talking about earlier, is scheduled to let in February of 24. Another project on the pre-construction side would be the Haywood Road improvement in West Asheville from Ridge Lawn to Patton Avenue. We had a public meeting in December, got a lot of really good input there physically at the meeting and a lot of support for the project. We also had a DOT managed website for public input with a survey and a comment option. I'm still receiving emails from that effort. The email link on the website, if you go to it, is still live. The survey is closed. It closed in mid-January. I just this week got the first, I guess, compilation or a synopsis of input from our public involvement unit. And so I got thousands of responses and comments to sort through, but so far a lot of really good information. A lot of people invested in helping to make that corridor a better place to walk and bike and to drive. Amboy Bridge sidewalk project, that's where Lyman and Meadow meet there at Amboy Road. I'm waiting on just a couple more pieces of information for the contract for that project. Some of the restrictions on construction times, and I just want to mention this. I don't know if this group has heard this before, but when that project starts, there will be a period of time this year when Amboy, that bridge there where, if you're heading to Carrier Park or any of the places along Amboy, That bridge will be down to one lane with a temporary traffic signal. And that'll be 24/7 for, it could be a few days. We don't know exactly how long it would take the contractor. They'll have a limit on how long that can be, but I just want to throw that out there. We'll have to do a lot of coordination with the city and public notification about how and what to do and when that'll be, and we'll of course coordinate with the contractor on that as well. But once the final bits of the contract are done, there's the last piece of that puzzle is the construction funding, and some of that will be, the final piece of that will be authorized. I expect it to be authorized the first week of April at the board meeting, the North Carolina Department of Transportation board meeting, and then we can let that project to contract as early as May. That's all I have on the pre-construction side, unless there are any questions. I do have just a few brief updates. One is the I-4700 project, which is the companion to the I-4400 in Henderson County. The work on I-26 widening is currently underway. The contract for the 4700 portion, which is in Buncombe County, is a little over 60% complete. Crews are working to complete the remaining sections of the new concrete pavement for the westbound lanes. There's a track switch to place all traffic on the new concrete pavement from Airport Road to the Blue Ridge Parkway. That's expected this spring, so in a month or two. Phase 1 of the Blue Ridge Parkway Bridge is nearing completion, and phase 2 of that construction begins this summer. The existing French Broad River Bridge has been removed, and work on the foundations for the last phase of the bridge has begun. For STIP project B4442, which are the bridges, the Reams Creek bridges up by 26, clearing on this project has begun. Grading and initial stages of the foundation for the new structures are expected to begin in the coming week. All lanes will be maintained throughout construction with minimal temporary lane closures. And there's some widening. I-26 is not widening, I apologize. I-26 rehab near the Tennessee state line. That's STIP I-5831A. One lane is closed eastbound. The contractor is continuing to work on the rehabilitation of the bridge joint, expecting to begin painting operations in mid-April, which will require various temporary lane closures. Deck rehab is expected to begin later in the summer. That's all the updates I have, unless there are questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next updates.
Give me a second, Steve. Okay, there we go. All right, so in Haywood County, just be aware that resurfacing season's about to crank up, and so I-40 there around Canton, resurfacing will be taking place there, which will neck that down to one lane. Prior to the bridges that are being constructed that are also necked down to one lane, there's two bridges to the northwest of Jonathan Creek Road. That last project on Haywood County is a safety project that was on Jonathan Creek Road, adding a turn lane. The I-26 project in Henderson County is kind of the same that's been ongoing for a while. Just be aware of traffic shifts as they complete lanes and shift traffic over. And also be aware of the Green River Bridge project that's near the Polk County line. All lanes are still open on that bridge, but the shoulders are closed, so it's very narrow through there. Please be aware. Good news on the Hollow Lake Road project. The contractor has committed to mobilizing his forces in April, so fingers crossed that that'll happen. Otherwise, that's all on the construction side, unless somebody has questions.
Like Island Lake's up from 4% last month.
Yeah, that's just the utility work that's been done. So, yeah. Okay, project development, the same projects that you've been seeing for a while with the comparison of the draft STIP dates to the current STIP date. There is one correction on here, U5839, which is Russ Avenue in Waynesville there. That project, the lead date got pushed out to July of this year. So from May of this year to July of this year. Otherwise, there's no changes on dates, at least until the draft STIP comes out on any of these projects. Remember that if it says preliminary engineering only or not funded, then it does have to go through prioritization, again, as Tristan's already talked about. Quick and easy, any questions on those?
No, thank you very
Thank
much.
y'all.
Thank you. Any transportation planning branch updates this month?
Yes, let me get the screen shared here. Okay, I'll try to be quick. It's been a long meeting. So 2023 is the year of the trail, as the state legislators have identified. There's going to be year-long activities to increase outreach and awareness as to how many great trails there are in North Carolina, and just build more coalition around them in general. So watch for that. I don't know exactly how those are going to roll out. The state freight plan has been adopted. This will be, I think, the 5-year update to the multimodal state freight plan. It's available on our website. And then the big news item this month is the clean transportation plan. This just went out for public comment at the beginning of the month. You should have all been forwarded an opportunity to comment on it. Frustratingly enough, comments closed yesterday. But I think there's still an email link. We are always taking comments on plans. And if you read it and you have comments, you can always send them to me, and I'll make sure Heather gets them. But I think you can directly contact the team through the website. The 2023 multimodal planning grant program, I think Alexis is on the call and we'll speak on that later. But just to say that if you're interested in a small planning grant, those applications are open until April. Just kind of in other news, in January, we had the Transportation Summit, as we have the last several years. The sessions have been recorded and they are online. There are a few changes to the DMV schedules. Asheville is one of the offices that is being allowed to stay open on the weekends during the summer to help process the heavy load. And so from June to August, it'll be open from 8 a.m. to noon on Saturdays. We already had an excellent train ridership presentation, but since he decided not to toot his own horn, I'll just say that we're still breaking records on rail ridership. 500,000 people chose NC by train last year, with 3 of our highest months ever being September, October, and December. And these are, very steady 10, 14, 30% increases. So setting, all-time records to continue the good work later. And then I have here listed a few grant opportunities. These are coming out of the CDC, and these are opportunities to help connect people with better nutrition, more active lifestyles, physical activity, and I don't know much more about them, so I would encourage anybody who's interested in pursuing them to reach out to the CDC and get more input as to the requirements for these programs. But it does seem like, to me at least, sidewalk greenway type of facilities could be eligible. And then just the final note, last month I mentioned the state freight plan, which always lists top 10 congested locations. Based on feedback, they are moving to a 6-month rolling average because the month-to-month was so volatile. And so they published the first 6-month rolling average, and then just earlier this week, the second 6-month average came out. And on both of them, I-40 in Clyde and I-26 south of Asheville are steady markers on that. Yeah, from construction and other reasons. Of the top 10, they are all located either in our region or in divisions 5 and 10, which are Raleigh and Charlotte. So competing with the big boys. Are there any questions?
Thank you,
Well, that's
Daniel.
it for me. Thank you.
Okay, anybody from Federal Highway today?
Yes, hi, it's Bill. I don't have anything today really to report on. Good meeting, other than the census boundaries and so forth. We do have 2 new MPOs in North Carolina. We've been working to help get those established. I know the 20-year boundaries will be, one of the next things to consider based on the new census designated urbanized areas. So I know Tristan has that well in hand. We heard something about that earlier in the meeting. So unless there are any questions for me, I don't have anything else today.
Thank you very much. Any questions, anyone? Okay, subcommittee work groups, staff updates, any housekeeping issues we need to discuss this month?
We've put a full report of the work of the work groups and the committees. I won't read through it all. Just to reiterate, I think one of the big things for 5307 subrecipients is both assisting Haywood County in what's going to be their transition from urban transit funds to rural transit funds, as well as reconsidering how urban transit funds are distributed to the region. That is one of the MPO's responsibilities. And that's something we have to get ready for FY24 transit funding. FY24 has to conform to the 2020 urbanized area. But I won't go through the rest of that. The Health Under Trail stakeholder group is continuing to meet about the planned Greenway Forum for the region. If you have questions, Hannah is the person to get in touch with. So that work is ongoing and is planned for August or September.
Late August.
Later this year. Legislative updates, there are actually a couple of things of interest. So one of them, Senate Bill 300 or House Bill 313, that's transportation resiliency. Those were introduced last week on both sides of the assembly. And essentially is trying to make $50 million available for local governments, MPOs, RPOs, and other agencies to help study and prepare for transportation resiliency challenges. That's something that I will say the NC Flood Coalition, I know has been working and reaching out to the town of Canton. They also reached out to us. And the thing I always say is, don't forget about rock slides in the mountains. Not all the info got. Also, House Bill 360 that was introduced yesterday. That is a bill to essentially end the prohibition of the use of state funds on standalone bike ped projects. I'll just note this is a bill that we've seen introduced in similar forms in the past, but for those of you who are unaware, in the SDI law, there is a clause that says no state funds may be utilized for standalone bicycle and pedestrian projects. That is something that's been introduced. But I think those are kind of the two main things we're keeping our eyes on. But former legislators know better than I do. A lot of this, I think, is going to play into budget negotiations. There's that. Also, just a really quick update on the prioritization work group. That's something Vic Eastland and I, as well as Mark Gibbs, the former Division 13 engineer, serve on. There's not a ton to report, I will say, but a couple of things being discussed. One is there's been a request that's moving forward for 3 projects from the last round of prioritization to automatically go into the next round of prioritization. So we will be seeing more submittals into the next round. There's not more funding, but there will be more submittals. Also, the work group has been discussing the split of funding for different modes. So as of right now, a minimum of 90% of funding is required to go to highway projects, a minimum of 4% to non-highway. 6% is kind of a cross-mode competition. But that is something that those discussions are ongoing, and I do think, just so folks are aware of the information we've been provided, non-highway, the biggest, I mean, that's quite a few modes, that's aviation, ferry, rail, bicycle, pedestrian. The biggest by far in that category is rail projects. I think there's often misconception it's bike ped projects. I think that's less than 1% of funding in the past few rounds. Rail is the big one that has been growing, and a whole lot of that is rail crossings to try to improve safety and congestion at those crossing points. So there's that. Also, a few of us have made a request to reevaluate how road diets are scored. As of right now, road diets are scored largely by volume and congestion, which are kind of the two things that make for a not great road diet project. And the road diets that should be no-brainers with lower volumes of congestion score terribly. Hopefully that's something we can work on. Also, just to point out, a lot of times when we talk about road diets, we're advised to submit them as bicycle and pedestrian projects. The thing I would point out there is that I find a little bit frustrating is that if you do that, then the local government is on the hook for 20%. And the road diets are often, and FHWA has noted, they reduce crashes by 27 to 33%, in which case you are requesting local governments to pay 20% on what can be seen as a safety countermeasure. And that's something I know one of our smaller local governments is interested in, but doesn't want to pay 20% for that. Who knows? But those are some of the things going through the work group. And I will just have a personal note that as someone who goes back and forth for Raleigh a lot, for the work group and other things, I would personally love a train, so that's the reason to get one. I forgot my sunglasses yesterday on the way back, and good God, I guaranteed myself some retina surgery in the future. That's all the reports we have.
Okay, does anyone else have any updates or special updates, announcements, anything like that?
I have one thing. If you or anybody missed the orientation a couple weeks ago, it is on our website under the recent events page. It's the top link, and it'll take you to a link to our YouTube channel where the recording is on YouTube.
Oh, and thank you, Hannah. One last thing, we'll send this out in a bit. USDOT just announced the other day they're opening the notice of funding opportunity for the charging and fueling infrastructure program for zero emission vehicle infrastructure. So we'll send that out to you all in a bit.
Okay, well, I hope you all have a happy Easter, and we will see you next month. And this meeting is adjourned.
One more public comment opportunity.
One more public comment. Just kidding. Anyone? Okay. It doesn't seem like there's any.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you, folks.